Tom parked his car a little way from the rusty red gates and leaned back in the driver's seat. Closing his eyes, he collected his thoughts. He just needed to get inside, get Miss Davis's signature, and it would all be over. "Soon I'll be rich. Soon I'll be rich. Soon I'll be rich," Tom muttered, mentally preparing for the meeting. "The old lady isn't easy," his boss had told him. "But now she's in a desperate situation. She came to us herself. The commission for selling her luxurious mansion is amazing. We found a client at that price in an instant. But her demands are strange. The deal can only be closed on April 30th, and the documents must be brought for a signature by a man over 25. You're the only one in our office who fits that." Tom hadn't been immediately trusted with elite real estate deals. But this was about a mansion worth $200 to $300 million and a 15% commission. He would finally buy his own apartment and move out of his in-laws' place. He was tired of being a freeloader and listening to their reproaches. He would pay off all his debts and solve all his financial problems, and with his savings, he'd open his own real estate agency. He was young and ambitious. He had caught luck by the tail and wasn't going to let go. The main thing was for everything to go smoothly with Ms. Davis. Tom continued to mentally prepare. "I spoke with other agents," his boss had said. "She can refuse at the very last moment, so it's very important to make a good impression on her. If you find the right approach, you'll get 3/4 of the commission. Everyone has tried to close this deal with her. Nothing has worked. I'll find an approach. I'll definitely find one. For this deal, I'll do anything. I didn't move from the village to the city for nothing. I didn't work as a mover, a builder, a sales representative, and a realtor just to end up with nothing. This is my moment." He hit the steering wheel with his palms and jumped out of his modest, credit-bought Mazda. He was struggling with the payments. He walked toward the gates. The fence and the gates themselves didn't look like they belonged to a retirement home for multimillionaires. It was very strange that Ms. Davis decided to live in this place, and for such an astronomical amount of money. An old, lonely lady could have moved abroad. Although, if she was selling her house, maybe she wasn't doing so well financially. Debts? What did it matter? The lawns in front of the fence were mowed. Good. But there was no one around. The huge area for the retirement home was located outside the city. Barbed wire ran along the top of the walls, and broken glass was laid on the brick fence. Tom involuntarily smiled. They sure know how to guard an old lady. Adjusting his suit, he headed for the gatehouse, which was a small booth with 2 doors. A large, strange-looking man was sitting on a stool by the door leading inside. He had long hair, a beard, and his eyes and face weren't visible. He was dressed all in black. In one hand, he held a rosary, and with the other, he blocked the passage, resting it on some incomprehensible device. Tom glanced to the side, and didn't understand what kind of clever contraption he was looking at. Sand was pouring from the top of a lid, and the grain slid right under the guard's palm, while a small lever was located at the bottom for some unknown purpose. Not paying attention to this oddity either, he moved into the booth. "Excuse me, I have an appointment at 8 o'clock with one of your—" Tom hesitated. He didn't know how to refer to the elderly people living in a retirement home. The word patient came to mind, but that didn't sound very good. "With one of your residents," he managed to say. "May I go in?" The big man didn't even move. It was as if he hadn't even heard he was being spoken to. "Excuse me," Tom called out to him. No emotion. He knocked loudly on the door. This seemed to have some effect on the man. He stirred, began to turn his head, raised the hand with the rosary and started to wave it in the air. "Dude, are you deaf?" Tom got angry and grabbed his arm. The touch startled the man. He recoiled, his hair parted, and it was possible to clearly see the guard's eyes. They were completely lifeless, chalk-white saucers, the kind you sometimes see in old people with advanced cataracts. Not expecting this, Tom recoiled. "Oh my God! Not only is he deaf, but he's also blind. Who hired him for this job?" At that moment, the man started to mumble something and pointed with the fingers of the hand holding the rosary to the top right corner of the booth. There was a mechanical clock hanging there, and under it, a sign with a reminder. "Visiting hours from 9 to 1800 hours. Listen, this must be some kind of misunderstanding," Tom began, approaching the guard. "Let me just go inside, and we won't tell anyone." As soon as the realtor tried to move the guard's arm aside to clear a path for himself, the man jumped out of his chair, stood up to his full height, and aggressively mumbled, causing Tom to jump back again in surprise. "Are you crazy, you hairy monkey?" the realtor snapped. "Everything is already arranged with your resident. All that's left is to sign the papers. Let me pass." He moved forward, intending to push the guard, but as soon as he lightly touched him, the man let out some kind of guttural shriek and pushed Tom away with all his might. He had an incredible amount of strength. The realtor flew out of the booth and landed on his backside. The guard mumbled aggressively, opening his mouth wide, and from the blackness, a small, ugly growth emerged that was intended to be a tongue but, due to some intrauterine defect, had turned into something disgusting, underdeveloped, and frightening. Stunned by what he had seen, Tom decided it was best to return to his car. A blind, deaf, mute guard, who had ever heard of such a thing? Taking a breath, he pulled out his phone and called his boss. "Hello again, Mr. Peterson. There's a problem here." Tom told him what had happened. "Listen, I don't know what to do. But if you don't get the papers signed today, we'll lose the deal. It's up to you. Think about it. Maybe I should climb over the fence?" The fence is not only over 6 feet tall, but it also has barbed wire and broken bottles. "I don't know, Tom, you decide. If you fail, I'll understand. You're not the first one to lose this deal. The old lady is strange." "Understood. Goodbye." Tom hung up the phone and quietly cursed. 20 million for one deal. Isn't that worth climbing over the accursed fence? In his childhood, he would have done it for fun. Well, let's consider 25 years old to be a second childhood, Tom concluded. Just in case, he went to the guardhouse and the gates again. The man had returned to his post and stood motionless, as if he wasn't alive. The thought of ramming the gates with his car flashed through his mind, but he immediately dismissed it. The gates, although old, were very well welded. The impact of a car would definitely not work, and there would be nothing left of his car, which he hadn't even paid off yet. With a sigh, Tom reached into the trunk, took out a pair of cutters from his toolbox, grabbed a folding stool that was next to the box, looked for the most suitable spot, noting to himself that some white substance, either groats or a crystalline mixture, was scattered around the wall. Maybe it was ant poison. He set up the stool, tied a shoelace to it that he had taken from his shoe, climbed onto the stool, cut the wire in 2 places, knocked the glass off, climbed onto the fence with the help of the shoelace, pulled the stool up, jumped down, grunted in satisfaction, and looked around. He was on a spacious paved area. It looked more like a basketball or soccer field, and not at all associated with a place for the elderly. Maybe they hold meetings here? Tom wondered. Ahead, an alley lined with coniferous trees stretched out, and a little to the side was one of the buildings of the retirement home. It looked shabby, as if it reeked of mustiness and neglect. It gave the impression that the retirement home was abandoned. Everything around looked long abandoned and unwanted. Tom put the shoelace back in his shoe, looked at the clock. It was 2 minutes to 8. He had to hurry. As he walked, straightening his clothes and tidying himself up, Tom headed for the nearest building. The sun had almost disappeared below the horizon. It was hard to see, and there was no lighting on the alley or near the building. What's more, there were no lights on in the building's windows. Tom began to suspect that he had the wrong address and even panicked. He was no longer walking but running toward the entrance, climbing the steps, and with great difficulty opening the door. He found himself in a spacious, long-abandoned lobby.
"Oh my God!"
Tom mumbled.
"Can I help you?"
A woman's voice came from somewhere. Tom turned around. A pretty young woman in a white coat was coming up from the basement.
"Yes. Can you help?"
Tom didn't pay attention to the lack of light and the general desolation of the building.
"I'm looking for Miss Fana Davis. She contacted our agency with a request to sell her real estate. And, oh, I know she warned you."
The woman smiled.
"Come on, I'll take you to her." "Of course, let's go,"
Tom said happily. As they say, through thorns to the stars. No matter what, the documents would be signed today. The woman headed for the basement. Tom followed her. It must be said that there was a complete mess all around. Papers were lying right on the floor, the paint was peeling off the walls, and there was no light anywhere. And when they went down the stairs, it became completely dark.
"The power went out,"
the woman explained.
"But I'll turn on the emergency lights now."
She walked up to a bare concrete wall, fumbled in the electrical box, and soon the basement was lit by the faint light of fluorescent lamps.
"This way,"
the woman said, pointing to a wide passage that was hidden around the corner and led somewhere deep into the basement. Tom followed her and found himself in a very spacious room filled with gurneys. On each gurney lay a body covered with a sheet. Judging by the legs sticking out from under the sheets, they were the bodies of dead old women, wrinkled skin, rotten, yellowed, and sometimes blackened toes, and cracked, greenish nails. It seemed these corpses were decades old.
Listen, are we sure we're going the right way?"
Tom said, frozen in the doorway, shocked by what he saw.
Yes,
the woman said cheerfully.
"Here's Miss Fana Davis."
She walked over to one of the gurneys and pulled back the sheet. Underneath was the naked, half-decomposed body of a disgusting-looking old woman. Tom took a step back.
"What's wrong?"
the woman asked with feigned surprise.
Are you kidding me? She's dead." "Oh, come on,"
the woman laughed.
"She's just sleeping. I'll wake her up now."
After these words, she slapped the corpse once, then again.
"Get up. People are waiting for you, you old witch."
Tom had already backed away, intending to leave the basement as quickly as possible. Apparently, instead of a retirement home, he had ended up in a lunatic asylum. Then the corpse stirred. Awkwardly waving her arms, the old woman raised herself up and sat on the gurney, unashamedly showing her wrinkled and sagging breasts, which reached her navel and looked disgusting.
"Well, answer him. I told you,"
the woman said with a playful tone in her voice, and moved a little to the side.
"Come here. She'll sign your papers."
Feeling a loss of connection to reality, Tom acted automatically, not fully understanding what was happening at all.
Hello, Miss Fana Davis,"
he stammered, moving toward the gurney.
"I'm Thomas Robertson, the realtor. You should have been warned about my visit. First of all, I'd like to say that it's a great honor for me."
As he got closer to the old woman, he saw that her bluish-yellow lips were covered with some kind of mucus. In the bleeding mound on her forehead, he could clearly make out the movement of fat maggots.
Of course,
the old woman rasped in a low voice.
You're helping me sell my estate. Well, since you fulfilled all the conditions, I'll sign where I need to. Give me the papers.
Not knowing what to do, Tom froze, clutching the papers and the pen. The guy came up behind him, wrapped her arm around his waist, pressed her chest against his back, and whispered,
What are you waiting for? Give her the papers. She'll sign.
Without knowing why, Tom obeyed, handed the pen to the trembling, wrinkled hand, and placed the papers between the old woman's bony, short legs.
Sign where the checkbox is,
he mumbled. The old woman started to fiddle with the pen, and the woman behind him was feeling his shoulders, chest, waist, buttocks, and thighs. He wanted to stop it, but he didn't know how. Something inside him switched, and he completely lost control of his own body.
What a handsome man you are,
the woman whispered in his ear.
So well fed.
After these words, she sank her teeth into his shoulder. This broke Tom out of his stupor. He screamed in pain, fear, and disgust. He threw the woman away from him so hard that she flew into the wall and hit it. He turned and ran, but looked back when the old woman called out to him.
You forgot the papers, Thomas,
the old woman wheezed. The woman was already standing as if nothing had happened, licking Tom's blood off her face with her tongue and smiling at him. Tom ran up the stairs blindly, got into the lobby, where some crazy old women with long, loose hair were already wandering around. They were all either completely naked or in transparent dresses. Tom huddled in a corner and crossed himself, and the old women, noticing him, only giggled. He ran, dashed outside, got lost, but quickly figured out where the alley began and where the fence he had climbed over was. He ran to the field and stopped. In the time he had spent in the building, someone had miraculously brought a whole pile of firewood and brushwood here and lit a real bonfire, around which naked old women and young women, mature women, and ugly men were circling in a mad dance. Everyone's hands were bloody.
Thomas, where are you going?
He was called again. He turned and saw the old woman limping behind him. A cloudy, yellowish-whitish liquid was leaking from her. Her skin was peeling from her face, and her hands were hanging like whips and twitching convulsively with every step he took.
I signed the documents. Take them.
After her words, everyone around him giggled madly. There was some kind of roar, then people shrieked all around, and there was so much pain, suffering, and fear in their voices that Tom would have preferred to go deaf than to listen to their screaming. No longer understanding anything, he rushed to the fence, pushed off the wall and jumped up, not paying attention to the pieces of glass and barbed wire cutting his hands. He was getting out, away from this cursed place. A little more, and he would be free. He just needed to pull his legs up. But what was this? His shoulder was caught in the wire. Every movement was a source of unbearable pain. Even in a state of extreme analgesia, Tom couldn't ignore this pain. He pulled forward with all his might, but instead of getting out, he got even more entangled in the barbed wire. He thrashed about like a fly in a devilish web. Every movement caused pain, and a new wound appeared on his body. He was bleeding and kicking, but he already knew he would never break free. Someone grabbed him by the heel. A disgusting, cold, slimy touch. The voice of his guide came to him.
You're very tasty. Don't leave so soon. Stay with us forever.
On the verge of madness, Tom frantically tried to find a piece of glass, not to get out, but to slit his own throat. He couldn't do it. All he could do was thrash and hope that he would bleed out before the coven that had gathered began the main part of the ceremony. The sounds of a monstrous cacophony erupted. A goat-like bleating was heard. Someone sank their teeth into Tom's heel. He pulled for the last time. The wire dug deep into his neck. Hot, bright arterial blood ran down his shoulder. While the forensic team was examining the crime scene, a young detective, Alex Johnson, approached his experienced colleague, Jack Evans.
Jack, I don't understand. There are no witnesses, no evidence. It looks like he got caught in this netting on the fence and died from blood loss. Well, then that's what we'll write down,
Evans answered phlegmatically.
What's not to understand? But how? Don't you see for yourself? The guard is blind, deaf, and mute. Who does that? The building is listed as a retirement home, but everything has been abandoned for a long time. There's only staff and 2 old women in one building. And the fence? It's like a military base. And why did they scatter salt all over the perimeter?
Evans sighed.
Well, of course, this is your first time here. Listen to me. I was around when people tried to fight this.
He nodded toward the body.
Do you know what happened when they put a normal guard here? The next morning, an ambulance took him away. He never left the mental institution. I once came here out of curiosity at night to listen, and I regretted it. Do you know what the date was yesterday? April 30th, Walpurgis night. You know, when witches gather for a Sabbath. Wait, are you kidding me?
A look of bewilderment froze on Alex's face.
Alex, I've never been more serious,
Evans said, frowning.
If you want to dig, dig, but you'll run into problems. The deceased worked at a real estate agency. I looked at their documentation. They would have gone bankrupt long ago if it weren't for the money from some microfinance organizations that are paying for who knows what services. There's clearly some kind of money laundering scheme there because the director of this agency is the nephew of the owner of this retirement home. And he's not the first agent of theirs we've found here. To make it not too suspicious, it happens once every 3 or 4 years, but always on a special date, either April 30th or St. John's Eve or some other forgotten holiday. I've talked to the relatives of the deceased. The scheme is always the same. There's supposedly a quirky old lady living here who owns elite real estate. All you have to do is come and get her signature on a specified date. You're complaining about the guard, but he's a good one. He doesn't let anyone in after 6, so they climb in themselves. And that's perfect because we can't accuse anyone of anything. It's not murder. It's an accident.
Alex looked at Jack intently but didn't say anything.
I'm not going to repeat anything I just told you. If you want to dig, dig, but don't even think about coming here at night. And if you do decide to, don't get too close. Stand a little way off and listen. Your desire to dig will pass quickly, I guarantee it. And now, let's go to work.
Jack left, leaving Alex to process what he had heard. End of the story.